Good day and welcome to another edition of Q&A Social Security Disability Today. I am your host, Anthony Reeves, attorney at law, and as always, it's a pleasure to have you on with me today. As always, if you want to find out more information about my law firm, you can visit me at www.reevesfirm.com. Of course, feel free to subscribe to my blog prescription, which is legalbeat.anthonyreeves.com. As always, I cover topics different on my blog than I do on my YouTube videos. You do know you can always shoot me a message here or add a comment here, and I'll make sure that I respond to your questions in a timely format. And of course, for my email purpose, anthony@reevesfirm.com. And if you haven't had a chance to check me out, go to www.blogtalkradio.com/in-the-know. I also do interviews on that show. They tend to be non-legal related, but I would encourage you to go there because you might listen to some topics that I've talked about foreclosure defense, life insurance, health insurance, things of that nature in the past. Might be helpful to you to do whatever I can to serve as a better tool for you. All right, let's go ahead and jump into our questions of the week. A person asked me a question with regards to how do you calculate the difference between your SSI payments and your DIB payments when you're getting all the back pay. This individual was told that their DIB monthly payment was going to be about $800 a month and their SSI payment was going to be about $600 a month. And they're kind of confused as to why they're using one to calculate the other. Good question. When you are getting approved for disability benefits and you have applied for Social Security and you've been determined to be eligible for SSI, which is supplemental security income, and DIB, which is disability insurance benefits, that's what we call a concurrent claim. That means you have one claim that qualifies under two applications concurrently. When they're calculating your back pay, I'm going to try to say it as straightforward as I can, this is what usually happens. For SSI, SSI is a need-based program. So what happens is any money you get from any other source, including Social Security, will reduce the money you get in SSI. So if they determine you're entitled to $400 in DIB, $600 in SSI, guess how much you're going to get? You're going to get $200 in SSI because they're going to subtract $400 from it from the DIB, and you're going to get $400 from the DIB. So what does that mean if you have more DIB than SSI? That means you won't get any SSI. Here's where that offset pops up. Most people fail to realize that they have to calculate the SSI first. And then what happens is that once they've calculated your entitlement to the SSI, because the SSI doesn't know what the DIB is entitled to, and vice versa. They usually don't. They usually are only interested in their particular programs. So what happens is the local office says, okay, you applied for disability on January 1 of 2010. You were approved last month, and so we're calculating your benefits back to the date of your application. They calculate it, and they determine that you're entitled to $600 per month. And so, bam. That dollar amount is calculated. They then transfer your file to the payment center to calculate your DIB. Now, one of the things you need to understand is that invariably, if your DIB is more than SSI, ultimately you're only going to just get the DIB. Here's where that funkiness comes up, where it gets a little confusing about, well, why don't you just give me everything from DIB? Sometimes one program pays faster than the other. So let's say, for instance, that your SSI kicks out you a check that takes in consideration your SSI payment. What is the DIB going to do? Well, if the DIB is greater than the SSI, what they're going to do is they're going to reduce money they would have given you under the DIB based on what you got from the SSI. And then what would happen is the DIB would take over. What does that mean? Well, let's say, for instance, that under that analogy, it's $7,200. Let's say that SSI gives you a check for $3,000 towards that $7,200 for that whole year of 2010. We'll use 2011. I said 2010, but 2011. Well, if you would have only had DIB, they would have paid you that same dollar amount. So you're not going to get paid the same dollar amount twice. So what they're going to say is, well, you got $7,200. They took $3,000. They paid you that already. That's $3,000 we would have paid you. So for whatever dollar amount we calculated during that time period, we're going to reduce it by the $3,000 we have given you. Now, For those of you who are sitting here going, saying, that is so confusing, what if I don't want to deal with all that weight? Well, one thing you can do is sometimes Social Security will give you the option to drop your SSI if they know there is a clean overlap. Well, let's say, for instance, you were receiving SSI, it starts January of 11, but your DIB starts in like June of 2010. That's an overlap. Well, that means that from June of 2010 all the way to the present, your DIB is greater than your SSI. So what some people will do is they'll say, I'll drop my SSI because once they calculate the DIB, DIB is all I'm going to get anyway. So that's how that overlap happens. And it confuses people, and I usually spend a lot of time, and please forgive me for rushing through this, explaining people that when you have two applications, the disability determination is the same, but the mechanisms of payment are different. And so what usually happens is if your DIB is less than the SSI, DIB needs to know that because they also need to be aware of the fact of how much that offset is going to be, because SSI is going to go down because the DIB is another financial source. But if it's greater than the SSI is going to disappear. So I know that seems a little confusing, and for the individual who sent me the question, I hope that answers it. If you want me to do a video specifically to kind of give you examples of how that actually operates, shoot me another message that says let me know, Attorney Reeves, I kind of am with you, but if you can give me a little bit more detail in a separate video, please do so. Not a problem. All right. Second question is, how come it seems that people who've gotten disability shouldn't be on disability to begin with? This comes up a lot of times because people swear that there's rampant fraud in Social Security. And here's the one thing I tell people all the time. You don't know why somebody got disability. You have no clue. So you really don't know what it was in their case that caused Social Security to determine that they're disabled. For instance, if somebody has a low IQ, but they're still able to do basic daily activities, that the fact they have a low IQ has no bearing on their daily activities. So you cannot take that in mind. If somebody has a bad heart, but you see him out there mowing the law is very clear. You can still do daily activities. You're not expected to be laying on the couch like a vegetable. And that's what happens, is that a lot of people have in their mind this preconceived idea of what somebody with a disability looks like. And in their mind, somebody with a disability shouldn't be able to do a thing. And so when they're like, I know that person, they're defrauding the government because there ain't nothing wrong with them. They drive a car, they go to the grocery store. I watch them washing, a bicycle, and I'm sitting here the whole time going, two things. One, the law says you're not expected to sit there as a vegetable. So get that thought out your mind. Second of all, regardless of how smart you think you are, you don't have a clue why they were found disabled. You really don't. Unless you have a copy of that decision and you understand hands down what that decision means, you're just speculating because in your mind you have a preconceived idea of what somebody on a disability. And let me also throw this out here. Don't rely on the fact what somebody told you, because sometimes even what they just say, they don't know. Like I'll have somebody will go and tell somebody, oh, I'm on disability for my back. Well, they may not realize they're on disability for their back, their knee, their neck, and also there's some heart problems. So it's a combination of those problems. But in their mind, when they originally applied, they applied based on their back. So they've rationalized that's the problem. And so keep in mind, is there fraud in Social Security? Absolutely. There's fraud in everything. Don't necessarily think that it's because from your own personal observation, talking about I see you, that just because you see somebody conducting activities and you think you know they're disabled based on a particular condition, that they're committing fraud, because it may not be the case, because the fact of the matter is you don't know why they're disabled. Meaning you don't know what condition caused them to be disabled. Now, I had an awesome question from a gentleman who is a moderator for Social Security Disability Forum, and he asked me to take some time to talk about the impact of education, age, and job skills on the determination of disability. Really quickly, and if I need to go, and for the gentleman who asked the question, if you want me to do a separate video separate from these, I'll be more than happy to. But most people fail to realize is that you've got 5 steps in the Social Security process. Are you working? Is it because of a health condition that's lasted 12 months or more? Is the condition severe enough where we can approve you just on that disability? Get those 3 out the way. 4th step. 4th step is looking at your residual functional capacity, which is basically how your condition limits you. along with your age, your education, and your work background. Can you do anything you used to do, or can you do anything else? Let's talk about each one. Age. There's really three categories of age: marginal, limited, and high school or more. Marginal is sixth grade and below. Limited is 7th through 12th without a high school diploma, and then or GED, and then high school and above is, of course, high school and above. It's fairly self-explanatory. This may sound kind of goofy, but the more educated you are, the more you possess this, it's deemed that you possess the skill level to be able to acquire skills to do a job. So that's the first thing. Okay, age. There are basically four fundamental age groups for purposes of disability determination. There is young, of course, there's kids cases, children, which is basically 17 years old and younger. There's younger individuals, 18 to 49. There is closely approaching advanced age, which is 50 to 54. There is advanced age, which is 55 to 59. And then, sorry, one other category. There is closely approaching retirement age, which is 56 and above. That means it could be 60 and above. Or 62 retirement age, which is like 60 to 64. I tell people that the golden cutoff line is 50. There is a guideline that we utilize. It's called the Medical Vocational Guidelines, or what we call the grids. And it tends to be more user-friendly once you hit that magical age of 50. Okay? So that's the one where you're really paying attention, because the idea is that as you get older, the ability to transition into other jobs becomes more difficult. At each threshold beyond a younger individual, it gets more favorable to a worker. Meaning, if you're 50 to 54, it's more favorable than if you're 18 to 49. If you're 55 to 59, it's much more favorable than if you're 50 to 54. So you see where I'm going with this. Also, there's the other added category, which has to deal with your work experience. This is the key point in terms of what skills have you acquired that you could take to other jobs of comparable levels or below. Let me give you a good example. Cashier. There are skills you acquire from that. Customer service, the ability to handle money, and do various counts, things like that. And you would say, well, how does customer service, what is a cashier, what kind of skills can I use from a cashier if I can't stand all day? Can you sit for 8 hours, 6 out of an 8 hour day? Absolutely. Guess what kind of jobs requires you to sit for 8 hours a day, and that allows you to use the skills from a cashier to transfer in terms of handling money, that can transfer to that type of work? Easy. A toll collector. Guess what they do? They sit there and they take money. Who else? A ticket taker. Guess what? They sit there and they take money. So what happens is Social Security, when they're looking at your job, they're looking at your skill set, and they're saying, what kind of skills have you acquired that can transfer to other jobs? Now, keep in mind, there are certain jobs where the skills are so hyper skilled that they don't transfer at all, unless they're to comparable jobs. When they're looking at your skill level, they break it into three categories. There's either unskilled, so there's no skills to transfer; semi-skilled, which is jobs like the cashiers, toll collector, things like that. Then there are skilled jobs, like an engineer, a dentist, a doctor, a lawyer, where those skills, some skills you get from them may be transferable to other jobs of lower exertional level or the same, but there are certain skills within that that are unique just to that job that can't be transferred over. So those are the things that they look at. And again, in using the vocational guidelines, it actually gives a breakdown in terms of what determinations you can make if somebody is of a particular age with a particular educational background and a particular skill set that transfers to others. And as well as the ability to speak English. That's a totally unrelated topic, but it kind of plays in there as well. And these are things that are looked at collectively to determine whether or not you are disabled. Now, I'll also tell you that those vocational guidelines are not to be used as a fill in the blank if other things are going on. If you've got pain issues, if you've got psychological issues, those are things that are above and apart from just looking at somebody's age, education, and work background that have to be taken in consideration separately. So those are the things that Social Security looks at, and I hope it helps you a little bit more. Thanks again for tuning in. I hope this video was helpful to you. If you have any questions, you know you can always come back here. I'm right here for you.